Starting here on the news of the day, we know about the Trump trial. Aileen, the judge down, and everybody thought she was going to be a little bit nice to him there in Florida because, well, she had been a Trump appointee. Well, she's coming forward with a due date of May 2024 for Trump's trial. That would be, of course, right in the middle of the campaign as you go into the 24 season, November being the big day. So it would obviously be a massive destruction. And this is why he and his team keep saying this is a form of election interference. I mean, this is just one of the many trials, right? Because they just keep coming. The hits keep coming. They just announced another one, or rather he did, said he was going to be indicted on another one just the other day. This all happens as the stakes rise on both sides. I mean, you got the RFK nonsense going on. The Democrats just want to take the guy out. They didn't even imagine this. Imagine you have a hearing there in Congress about censorship, and you invite RFK to come and speak, RFK Jr., and then you try and censor him. They actually did that. They said, well, because he's made some of these inflammatory comments and he has said some things. Like, don't get me wrong. He's said some things and some of them have been rather questionable, especially if you take them out of context, et cetera. And consequently, they said, well, he's not responsible enough to be in this hearing. And so they wanted to censor him by bringing him behind closed doors. Well, you understand the problem with that, or the irony, I should say, of that. In the meantime, you get Chuck Grassley. There's Senator Grassley with his 1023 form, and this form is unverified, but from the FBI, and it's interviewing somebody, and they're basically accusing Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and actually the Biden family, of taking quite a bit of money from foreign sources. So none of that's actually been technically confirmed, but where there's smoke, there's fire. People say, I only go back to what happened with the dossier, right? Remember the dossier? And it was so insanely irresponsible of our FBI not to properly investigate that. That was unverified, and yet they went forward and did a whole host of things that frankly were just so over the top and designed to take out Donald Trump back then. Well, now you just want to make sure, at least I do, and I'm just trying to be fair here, that things get verified before they're out there and people are making these accusations. It wouldn't surprise me, of course, and my bias on that one, but I do think that there's a total lack of responsibility on all sides. And I think Americans feel this. I think Americans are sick of this, and I don't blame them for being sick of it. I want to share with you some data that shows you how sick they are of it. They're not donating to campaigns anymore. In fact, if you look at Democrats and their donations, grassroots donations, I'm talking about, mom and pop out there in the middle of the country, $15.2 million has been donated thus far to Democrats. You compare and contrast that with how much had been donated just 2 years ago to the Democrat Party. It was $23.5 million. So they've plunged. That's a pretty big decrease. But it's not just happening to Democrats, because if you look at Republicans, they've only collected $7.1 million. Oh, gosh, that's like, half. Less than half what the Democrats have actually collected. So the Republicans have got some work to do on the grassroots thing. And you compare and contrast that to 2 years ago when they got $20.6 million in the door by this time for grassroots efforts. So it shows you that people have just kind of reached the tipping point. They're sick of it. And I get it. I understand it. I'm kind of sick of it too. It's this constant barrage that we're getting. They keep going after Trump and they keep announcing new lawsuits. And you're like, what the heck is going on? And in the meantime, we're learning about all this alleged stuff with Joe Biden and his family. And then you're really like, what is going on? It is just nauseating and it's just disgusting. It makes you realize why you don't like any of these politicians to begin with, why we can't really trust either party. And I think that's reflected in Americans' sort of distancing of their wallets, shall we say, as they should. That's smart right now, from both of these parties. All that said, I would just say this, you know what? There is so much at stake in the here and now. It's really important that we care. And it's really important that we care because this is our future and it's our children's future. And there's so many levels to care about it at. But this one really hit me hard today because I saw the representative for the Health and Human Services Department there at the Biden administration's White House get out there and say this to a reporter. I want you to hear the full exchange. Admiral Levine.
What would you say to folks who think that they're being reasonable by saying, why can't children just wait till they're 18?
Adolescence is hard and puberty is hard. What if you're going through the wrong puberty? What if you inside feel that you are female, but now you're going through a male puberty.
Okay, here's the problem. Here's the problem, Admiral Levine. What if you're wrong? You're actually going to destroy a child's body? You're going to make sure that that child has no chance of ever becoming who he or she was intended to be or wants to be someday? I mean, my gosh, you're going through 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. These are tough years. And then you layer in something like that, where adults in positions of authority are trying to suggest that a child really knows their gender and needs to be that gender, and then go through the operation, by the way, to be that gender. I mean, that is absolutely insane. You do what you want. You know what? You're 21 years. By the way, guess what? Rachel Levine did that whole thing when Rachel was 54 years old, a full-grown adult. And yet you've got representatives in government saying that this stuff should be happening to kids. We don't allow them to drink. We don't allow them to smoke. We don't allow them to vote. We don't allow them to drive until they're 16. And yet somehow this idea that you can just pick your gender, just pick it, because that's what you feel like at that given time. Forget the fact that, those years are challenging years for anyone, even under the very best of circumstances. You're setting yourself up for a major problem in society. And this is why, as disgusted as we all are with Washington, D.C., we need to care. We need to care, because if we don't, you're going to have a pretty messed up society and a lot of really unhappy people and a lot of kids that made the wrong decisions because they were pressured into it. There's peer pressure, there's social media pressure. I want to share with you a study that you're not going to hear about. If you go and do a Google search or whatever, they're not going to talk about this. This is a study that was done in conjunction with a psychologist, at Northwestern University. And it was looking at rapid onset gender dysphoria in kids. And what they found was that it was dominated primarily by very high intellect females. 75% of the kids were high intellect females that decided they wanted to change their gender. And they had a history of all kinds of other mental challenges. So when someone has mental health challenges and they walk into the psychiatrist or the psychologist's office, and the go-to move, because this is what the government is telling you, including Joe Biden's Health and Human Services Department, is, oh, maybe you're just in the wrong body. Maybe you actually should be a different gender. And then you're going to actually embark on these operations. You understand the consequences of that. I hope everybody understands the consequences of that. The consequences are pretty darn gory, frankly, if you ask me. And then you're stuck with that basically the rest of you. There's no turning back. You lose certain parts. That's that. And that's what they're not conveying to these young kids. They're glorifying this in really heinous ways. The other interesting component to this study was that there's a social component in that if somebody else is doing it, if they hear about it enough, they are influenced by that. Great. Because we're hearing about it a lot, including from the government of the United States of America. So it's pretty shameful stuff, if you ask me. A reason to care a lot about what's happening and who is in charge, because this is going to affect the legislation in the future. Hey everyone, Trish Regan here. If you enjoyed that clip, please do me the favor of subscribing to the channel. Just hit that little subscribe button right over there. Did I do that right? Not quite, but you know where it is. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so that you get the alerts, and I'll see you back on the show.